You are not here to blend in. Oh, I am so excited about this Wellness Wednesday's lesson. Again, I want to remind you, you are not just here to blend in, you are here to shift culture. You see, movement builders are never, ever, 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 ever satisfied with the status quo, okay? They're brave enough to say what's been swept under the rug. They shine a light on the uncomfortable and they dare to be different even when it makes other people uneasy. So, family, this week's class is inspired by the social and political visionary. And one of many truths are that, this message applies to every single one of us. Okay, every single one of us have all the archetypes in us, as I've said in other videos, and more importantly, know that you yourself has a social and political visionary energy within you. Okay, because movement building doesn't just happen out there in society, it starts inside of you. All right. So now I want to get into the first segment, which we're going to kind of explore the role, the gift, and the challenge of this essence. Okay. So the role is about being a system shifter, okay, a culture changer, a policy rewriter, and we're going to get deeper into what this means. Okay, the gift is the courage to disrupt injustice, and that can show up in many ways. Again, we'll get into that. So it's the courage to disrupt it and design new ways of being. Now, the challenge that comes along with that, of course, is resistance in this journey, in this essence, in this energy. You will face resistance, and not just from systems, okay, but from people's fear of hearing the truth, and sometimes even our own fears of accepting and acknowledging the truth, right? So, for example, we have many social and political visionaries, and there are many lessons that we can learn from them. And one of the most popular, right, is Miss Parks. Okay. Now, I have to acknowledge and share a truth that she was not the first or only person to refuse giving up her seat. Okay. But whatever time, season, or reason, she was chosen to publicize this form of resistance. Her choice became a catalyst for the bus boycott. Okay, because why? She dared to be different. And she faced systematic backlash and the discomfort of people who didn't want the trouble. This is people even from her own community. Okay, and I'm sharing these examples for a reason because along your journey, you're going to dare to be different. And I want to be very clear that there will be resistance from external and the internal, and just know it is a normal part of the process. Okay, the key is having the tools, the wisdom, the guidance, the support to be able to navigate through it all. All right, so that's just like an example of a way that certain disruption can happen on a personal, social level. But let's talk about business. All right. So in the business world, and I forgot the person's name, but there is a CEO, and there may have been CEOs before this person who decided to implement a 4-day work week. Now, this 4-day work week is to be implemented in a traditional corporate setting. Now, at first, this CEO, as I'm sure as many other CEOs, have faced skepticism, they faced resistance, they faced criticism, okay, by trying to make a 5-day work week, which the industries are used to, into a 4-day work week. But here's the thing. By daring to disrupt the norm, they actually created a healthier work culture, right? It boosted productivity and it shifted what was possible for the whole industry. All right. So I want to give another example of disruption. And this is for those of us who, are recognizing the disruption in legacy, right? In family legacy. So we have disruption on a societal community norm or lane. We have disruption in the business world as a business owner, in the corporate world, right? Disrupting industries. And then again, even in our personal life in regards to family and generations. So we have this business owner, maybe like you, maybe an entrepreneur, a creative like you, right? Who was raised in a family where money isn't talked about. Wealth isn't talked about. We don't talk about money, right? But this particular person, you decide to start opening financial conversations with your children, right? And so, yes, there is a discomfort that may come. Yes, there may be a pushback that may come, but when you begin to rewrite generational patterns of secrecy and scarcity, that's the beauty of daring to be different. Think about the ripple effect, the impact that's being created, right? So, what's the point here? I'm so glad you asked. The point is, okay, the real challenge isn't just the system. A challenge is people's fear of hearing the truth and your willingness to speak it anyway. All right. This is the beauty of learning wellness from the point of view, from the essence of the social political visionary archetype. Okay. Again, I can't stress this enough. All of these lessons so far have been inspired by the different kind of visionary archetypes. And again, you may be leading in one or two, but know that all of them are in you and they all are required to show up in different aspects of your life's journey, of your entrepreneurial journey, of your leadership journey. All right. So let's talk about how movement building starts with you. And there's this saying I really like to remind myself of, which is you can't rewrite laws or systems if you first don't rewrite the ones within yourself. So if we think about some of the people who we looked up to that made great change in the community, that made great change in the world, there was no way that they could go out into the world and create that change unless something happened within themselves first. Okay. And the first thing we always like to address is belief systems. So, how does this apply to you as a business owner, as a leader, as an entrepreneur? Once again, I'm so glad you asked. So, I want to give an example of how we can understand this movement building starting within us. So, when we think about belief systems, and this is something that I myself went through and the people that I'm working with have went through, are going through. And for example, there is a goal, a vision of wanting to scale to $10,000 months, right? So you come in with with this belief system or this goal, this vision of, you know what, every month minimum, I want to make at least 10 grand a month. But deep down, you believe that selling is pushy. Okay. I want you to recognize that the same way a lot of social and political visionaries are out there disrupting and fighting injustices to change laws and change policies, I want us to also recognize the internal policies we're writing or have been written within us. And so, again, we say, I want $10,000 months, right? But deep down, you believe selling is pushy. And so that is an inner policy that has been written of silence. So that example right now talks about this inner policy of silence that keeps you from making offers. All right, that's just one small example. There's tons of them, right? But that's just one example because I really want you to be able to resonate with these inner policies that we are going by that makes up our governing system, our internal governance system. Okay. So, what's another thing that we need to dare to be different? So, again, the first is belief systems, the next one is habits and patterns. So, for example, you want to scale your business, right? And let's just say you're a coach, because that's just the most easiest I go with. And again, this applies to every single position, every single industry, every single pathway that you're traveling as an entrepreneur. I don't care if you're a coach, if you are an engineer, if you're a creative, if you're a wellness practitioner, whatever it is, you have this inner governing system that deals with your habits and your patterns. So you say to yourself, you know what, I want to scale my business. But instead of reaching out to potential clients, which helps you scale your business, you spend hours reformatting Canva slides, right? Now, of course, slides or images or promo pictures can help you scale your business by having more people consume your information. But if you're also wanting to reach these $10,000 months, if you also want to scale in a more impactful way, you're going to reach out to those clients instead of diverting to this low value task that is not going to impact the scaling of your business as much as the strategy of reaching out to these potential clients, right? So what we may not recognize is that this is a policy of procrastination, but it's just disguised as productivity. Right? Because being productive means not just doing an action, but doing an action that is aligned with the goal or the vision, or the objective that you want to accomplish, right? But instead, we divert our attention and our energy and our work to something else. And because we're just in the moment of doing, we think we're productive, but no, no. It's procrastinating from what it is that you really need to do, right? So again, there is a policy of silence, knowing that you want to scale in one way, but you believe the tool that's needed, the strategy that's needed to scale that business, you have a negative association with it, right? So now you're silent. Now you're not moving. So again, the policy of silence. When you say you want to scale business and know a tactic, a direct tactic or a strategy to scale that business, but you divert your attention to something that's not going to have as much of an impact on that objective, that's a policy of procrastination. Now let's go to self-talk, right? So you say to yourself, I'm ready to raise my prices, right? But you know what? Or excuse me, I want to raise my prices, but I don't think I'm ready to raise my prices until I take one more certification, until I take one more class, right? And so I want you to think about what policy that is. That's a policy of delay. It's a policy of delay that robs you of momentum. And I want you to know the difference, right? That policy of procrastination, where you have to do one thing, right? That's going to be productive, but you divert your attention and your energy and your work to something else, and you disguise that action as being productive. Whereas, you have this intention or this wanting to raise prices, but you delay doing it because you've created another requirement for yourself that may not be really needed. So now you created a policy of delay, and now your momentum has been affected, right? So what is the point here, Sharita? Once again, I'm so glad you asked. The point is this: every every single unjust belief, every unjust habit, every unjust self-talk pattern is a policy that you've written against yourself. I want to say this again. Every unjust belief, habit, or self-talk pattern is a policy you've written against yourself. And so we need to rewrite it. And when you rewrite it, you start building your inner movement, which is going to eventually transform, or excuse me, transfer to external movement. All right, so now I want to explore the principles of movement building. All right, y'all, let's get this movement going. And so the first principle is be brave enough to be different, okay? Because here's the thing, at first, innovation always looks like rebellion, okay? If you think about it, that's how it comes across. So as a business example, Airbnb, right? Airbnb became what looked a little crazy until it became normal. It was like, what? You're renting your house to people that you don't even know, right? Like, what is that? And some of us have already been Airbnb before Airbnb existed, which was subleasing, subletting your place, right? And so Airbnb was a crazy idea until it became normal. It became normalized that people would rent out their house to other people. So therefore, Airbnb saw this as an opportunity to create a legitimate, profitable company from it. I want to tell y'all about Uber and Lyft. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day. This was probably 10, 15 years ago before Uber or Lyft was even thought of. Now, taxi cabs was always a thing. But I remember in Atlanta, and I still have the guy's number, right? And I think just because when you save on a account in different phones, it just still stays there. But I called him $5 Tay, okay? Because Tay would take you anywhere within a certain mile radius for $5, okay? And so at first people probably thought like, man, you crazy just picking up random people for $5. But he was on to something, okay? And so the thought of charging random people, creating a business without a business license or creating a means of income, right, was looked down upon. There's even some saying that, this concept was illegal until it became an industry. So I got to give a shout out to $5 Tay, okay, because he was the first person that I knew of that used his car, okay, and say, you know what, I'm gonna give people rides for $5 within this radius, and this is just how I make my money. Okay. So again, this concept was said to be illegal until it became an industry. All right. Let's talk about our personal life, right? So you may be called in some circles, and I can resonate with this so much. You can be considered too much or too radical in certain circles. But here's the thing. The future belongs to the ones who dare to stand out. And one of my most favorite principles that I live by is knowing that my purpose is not to create from the past, it's to create for what's coming, right? It is to live in the present according to the future, according to what's coming, according to what I can create, what we can create, to what will be created. Okay. So daring to stand out, daring to be different, the people who are boldly able to live in that energy almost always are the go-to and become successful as time goes on, right? Because you just dared to be different. Principle number two, all right, bringing the light from the dark, okay, or bringing the light into the dark. So this energy of this type of visionary, they dig where others avoid. And I can personally attest to that as a transformation guide, not just in personal, being a medicine woman, but also in business, right? I can give an example where I was working for in the corporate office of a major home improvement I was gonna say grocery store chain or however we want to call that. I don't want to say the name. And there was this campaign about this pesticide, and at the time it was in the news that these pesticides had cancer-causing agents. And yet here y'all are calling a meeting to do an advertising campaign about it. And I had no problems digging in the dark. Like, excuse me, before we break out the media buy-in plan and all that, y'all do know that this pesticide that you're about to create a campaign for has cancer-causing agents, right? So again, visionaries, we're able to dig in the dark. We're able to dig where others avoid, right? And it's for good reason because we also consider where that decision, where that concept, whatever people are afraid to dig into, where that the impact it's going to have, right? So the in business, when you dig where others avoid, in business you call out, you name toxic culture instead of ignoring it. Okay, in life you finally admit that a friendship is one-sided, right? So again, movements don't begin with comfort. They begin with honesty. They begin with truth. They begin with authenticity and integrity. Integrity. All right. I just want to make sure my mic is on. Okay. Principle three, reframing resistance. Okay. Resistance is not a stop sign. Resistance is proof that you are disrupting something. Okay, so again, finding comfort, finding resistance to be normal will really help regulate your nervous system and also encourage you to continue moving forward. Growth is never comfortable. And sometimes, if we think about some of the sicknesses or ailments that we had growing up as a child or even as an adult, in the journey of healing, in the journey of recovering, there's always this existence of being a little bit more uncomfortable before things get better, right? So how does this look in business when we talk about reframing resistance? How do we look at this in business when we talk about resistance isn't a stop sign? So for example, in business, you may launch a new product, but then hear doubts from those closest to you, right? In life, you may do something different and go to therapy and really address the generational patterns that's been happening in the family, but then your loved ones dismiss it, they downplay it, right? And so when we talk about resistance, this means you are shifting norms, and that's the point. That's the point, shifting norms, because at one point those norms served a purpose, and it could have been just for the sake of surviving. But when you say, I'm so tired of surviving, I want to thrive. I need to shift this norm. I'm so tired of living from hustle. I want to live in wholeness. I have to shift this norm. Okay. So that's the third principle. The fourth principle we're going to talk about is building from the inside out. So a lot of movements collapse when the inner culture doesn't match the message. Ooh, I can go in for days on this one. Okay. In the journey of helping people with their internal communications with themselves, their internal communications with their business, and I can recall one particular client where, you know, this person was in process of building a nonprofit organization that was there to help the community. Now, because this person had money on the outside, you know, you had all the bells and whistles, all the nice brand packaging. You may have even acquired a specific place for people to gather, and it looks beautiful. But on the inside, what was going on, the chaos that was going on the inside, I was like, oh no, ma'am, ain't no way I can continue to be a part of this if the inside is not healthy because the external is straight up a mask. The external is a facade, it's a fraud, and eventually it will come to head, right? So the movements will collapse when the inner culture doesn't match the message. So in business, right? For instance, as a person who is very much into wellness, there's no way I can sit here and talk to you about wellness and self-care, but I'm running on fumes. There's no way I can sit here and serve clients in a capacity that in a capacity that I want them to be in, and I'm not in that capacity myself. I'm not living what I am teaching. I'm not walking what I'm talking, right? So in business, you cannot preach or offer one thing, but then the energy that you're running on is in contradiction to it, okay? Because it will fall, okay? And it's also healthy to recognize when you are doing that because now you would need to kind of not just stop your momentum fully, but really reset, renew yourself, regenerate so that you can show up authentically, right? In life, in personal life, right? In your family, you may want to teach, you know, your children about confidence, but, you know, we are moving out of the culture of do what I say, not as I do. that doesn't make sense because now we're teaching the next generation to be authentic. We're teaching the next generation to contradict themselves. So if you are wanting to teach the next generation confidence, but you're modeling constant self-credit criticism and self-talk, that you're it's going to fall. The movement will fall, okay? And so understanding that a part of integrity is the infrastructure of the movement. Integrity is the infrastructure of every movement. Okay. So we can marinate on that. I cannot wait to go deep into a live session with this one, y'all. Daring to be different. This is the time that we're in right now. Okay. A lot of things are being disrupted, and how can you contribute to disruption in a way that creates a positive impact, a positive legacy? All right. So let's get into our coaching tool. Okay, now this is all about rewriting your inner policy. And this week's tool is called that, Rewrite Your Inner Policy. So I would like for you all, I'm going to challenge you all to identify the current policy you've been living by. So, as I gave an example earlier, how many of us are living from the policy of procrastination? Where, for instance, you spend hours on Canva instead of sending proposal. Okay. We need to call it what it is. There's a law, there's a policy you've been enforcing against your own self. And I don't want to speak this to people it doesn't apply to, right? And it may not be as intense as others, but just kind of do a self check. These are tools that you can use for yourself, for your clients, your customers. What is a law you've been enforcing against your own self? Okay. And then I'm going to challenge you to rewrite it into a new policy that supports your vision. So, for instance, if I have a policy of proactive progress, so I'm going to say my policy every morning I send 3 proposals before opening Canva. Okay, if you know that you just divert to Canva when you have, or you divert to a task when you have something else to do, but you're procrastinating, I'm going to offer you to rewrite that policy. So every morning you do this before you do that. Okay. Another example, right? I want to go through what it looks like going from an old policy to a new policy. So one example is your old policy is the policy of playing small. All right. And that can look like I only show up, I only post in this way or that way, or I only post once a month because I'm afraid of judgment, right? Judgment from doing too much, judgment of being too much, judgment of what others may think of me. So again, that old policy of playing too small or playing small, we're going to rewrite that to a policy of consistent voice, meaning I'm going from I only post once a month because I'm afraid of judgment to I post once a week to normalize my message and grow my reach. Okay, let's rewrite the policy. Okay, and so as you're going through this, I want you to think about if you ran your business, if you ran your life and business by these new policies, what could change in 30 days? What could change, right? Like really reflect on that because it's one thing to do the work and it's even better when you're able to visualize and feel the outcome of it. Okay? So again, family movement building isn't just about shifting the world, it's about shifting yourself. Okay? And the more you become your own best advocate, the stronger your leadership becomes. The more you dare to be different, the more you create space for others to rise. All right. So again, thank y'all for tuning in. This has been Sharita Rael, the Vision Catalyst. I want to thank you for joining me for another Wellness Wednesday where we are trading fitting in for standing out. We're trading silence for truth, And we're trading self-sabotage for self-advocacy. Okay? So stay aligned, stay empowered, and I will see y'all next time.